Well, we're back, and for those of you that are just tuning in, how do you like that? I got it right this week. You're watching Rocker's Corner. I'm your host, Breeze, and that was an original from my very special guest, Astrocoven, and it was entitled Red Tide. And why don't I just be quiet and introduce my very special guest, Astrocoven. Well, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having us, Breeze.
Well, I understand you're all the way from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, how was your trip out here?
Took a
Not
nap.
too bad. Not too bad. Going back will be worse because it'll be dark. And
You got to watch
Dark
out for those
highways.
Canadian moose.
yes.
I think they're called swamp donkeys. Okay, now let's start off the show. I always ask my guest usually the same question starting off the show. Is the name Astrocoven? Very unusual. Where'd you get the name?
Well, we're all big fans of stoner rock, and I'm a huge Electric Wizard fan, so I wanted to call the band Super Coven after an Electric Wizard sort of a B-side EP they did, but Chris didn't want to use someone else's name for something, so I was like, okay, well, how about Astrocoven, thinking that, no, they're just going to throw that out because that's just retarded.
You said a bunch of different covens. There's like Ultra Coven.
Yeah,
and
we went down, I just went through every adjective that came to mind, but they liked Astrocoven, so yeah, Astrocoven.
Okay, now just staying on the same topic for name of the band. Do you believe the name of the band is important, or
Very important.
and why?
Took
why
us
is that?
actually the previous incarnation of the band had another member in it who was doing the vocals, and we had a whiteboard and we had about 30 different names that we all put on, and every time we'd have practice we'd cross a couple off, and then eventually we came down to 2, and then we had a party and we made people vote on which one was better.
Well, that's a good idea. To drop the name in a hat and eventually pick one out, or
The crappy name won, though, so
Yeah.
we changed it as soon as he left the band.
Yeah, and then we just started from scratch
Yeah.
when he left.
oh, okay. I always had the idea that the name of the band wasn't really that important, but that would be just my opinion.
Well, it's important that it doesn't suck, right? As long as it doesn't suck, it's
And it's
okay.
not
It's
taken.
just
Yeah, that's true.
it's
That's
really
true.
hard to grab something original that isn't really bad. So
Yeah, I've heard a couple of interesting names, like, for example, 5 Minutes for Fighting. Would anybody think that was a good name?
I would
that works.
feel like hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined the band just last week for the first time in so many years. Yeah! So look forward to it. I know I am. And we came up with the name Trenchcoat Candy.
Creepy.
I
I like it.
Yeah, I picture all these promotional things. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. Now, you're an all-original band, or you do
A few
some
covers,
copies,
yeah.
but mostly all original.
Yeah.
Now, in Winnipeg, the music scene is actually quite big, opposed to the surrounding areas. Do you find it easy to find work being an all-original band, or should I say paid work?
Well, it's hard to find a place that likes heavier music. Like ours, there's only a few different venues we can play at.
Okay.
So we're forced to get more creative and actually rent out places. Like there's a church that we play at sometimes, and we'd rent out a theater and places like that where we can just get people in and we don't have to worry about the same old bars.
Well, I mean, like it's a really big scene and there's a lot of bands, but there's a lot of bands in maybe 3 or 4 regular venues. So
Okay, yeah.
it's competitive, and because it's a big scene, especially if you're still kind of starting out, it's harder to get your foot in the door for sure, right? So, there are pros and cons to being in a city with a really aggressive scene.
Okay, now how long has the band been together?
Just
Over 2 years.
Just over 2 years.
Yeah.
We've only
What?
been really gigging for part of that, though. Took about 6 or 8 months to get started, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, now your originals are definitely original, and they seem to be quite lengthy. Why
Just most
did you?
recently.
Why are you choosing that route opposed to the stereotype of 3 minutes and 45 seconds in out?
They weren't always like that. Like we first started with shorter songs, but then started jamming more, and just when you jam, you just get into the groove, and the song ends up being like 10, 12 minutes long.
Yeah, almost like a story. We wanted it almost like a storybook.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's an interesting way of looking at it. Well, that's the way it should be, actually. Is a good storybook. Now, where do you get your inspirations to come up with originals?
Sometimes a
do?
band you see, or just a CD that you're listening to, a record that you're listening to. Normally it just starts with a riff, and then me and him will get going together, or Chris will start, and starting to.
We all bring pretty diverse influences to the group, so kind of just get together and make noise until something shapes out of it. We have a really selfish approach to songwriting. We basically just write songs that we want to listen to. So the fact that they're all long really just says more about our taste than really our skill
I want
as
to talk
songwriters.
a little bit more about your original and your writing procedures for your originals, but let's get into another one. This is an original also, entitled Dead Hands.
Yep.
And we'll be right back. We'll talk a little bit more about your originals. Okay, as like I said, and my very special guest this week is Astrocoven, and we're going to hear another interesting original from them entitled Dead Hands. And you're watching Rockers Corner, and like I said, I have a very interesting email and a very interesting announcement. We'll be right back after this.